Hey everybody, Matt Barton here with this week's Broker Minute or Two. Hey, so I get questions from time to time, actually fairly frequently, and it's some version of, is the MLS input form, the data form, actually required? I'm not listing it, it's this or it's that. There's a lot of reasons why people ask that question. So I wanted to tackle that question today and give you two specific reasons why the answer is yes, the company does require it. Okay. The first one is more general. In the world of real estate, we never, almost an absolute statement, we never want to be the original source of information. That's why on some of our forums it says, okay, where's this information coming from? For instance, the square footage. Who's the source of it? Is it the owner? Is it an appraisal? Is it county records? Notice there's not a checkbox for it's the realtor, because that would be a very bad move. And so that's just an example of one of the things where we should never be the source of information. So now, more broadly, the data input form captures so much detail about our listing property. And there's a reason why there's a signature by the owner and initials on the pages, so that we can definitively say they were the source, right? Because when we become the source, then we get lumped into the liability game. And that's a bad play. That's a bad game to play, right? So that's number one reason why Remax Associates requires that on any listing we have a data input form. If certain sections don't apply, then addend and say they don't apply. But to just say, I'm not going to provide the data input form, but we're going to market this property, even if it's just like creating a flyer. It's almost impossible for me to think of advertising a property without some level of detail about the property and having it be an effective marketing tool. Most agents will put some level of detail, and if you don't have a paper trail of where that detail came from, you become the original source for all intents and purposes. Okay, the second one is more contract specific, and I wanted to show you this. So here's my screen. This is the UAR, exclusive right to sell listing agreement, which the company uses. And I'm not going to go through all of it, but one section. Let me scroll down here. Here's the highlighted section. Section 16 talks about the entire agreement. Before I jump into this, there's this concept in contract law that says if we don't have a meeting of the minds, right? And there's a second concept called the four corners of the contract. What's actually in the four corners of the contract? If those things are not adhered to, there's a legal challenge or a contractual challenge, a civil challenge. So section 16 says this, the entire agreement, right? That's the heading. This listing, meaning the exclusive right to sell, including, and it talks about the seller's property condition disclosures, and then underlined there is the data form. That is the MLS data input form, the wire fraud, and any additional addendum contain the entire agreement between the parties. That's peculiar language in contracts, right? Because if something of that is absent, then we do not have the entire agreement, which means it's pretty hard for us to have a meeting of the minds, which means we have the possibility to invalidate a contract. Okay. And so I get it. Somebody may come to me and say, well, you know what? My clients absolutely do not want this on the MLS. That's cool. But our company's policy is we still want the data input form. One, because we can now, like I said, we can now show who was the original source, and because even if it's not on the MLS, unless this section was changed, which you could change with an addendum, I wouldn't recommend it, but unless you change that, this is a requirement to have the entire agreement, a full agreement, a meeting of the minds. So there's your a little bit longer answer of why we require the data input form on our listings. If you have any questions about that, more specifically, feel free to reach out, and I hope you have a great day.